Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining the session today. So I am Virginia Bailey. I'm the Participation Director at British Fencing, and I'm also heavily involved in our events that we deliver through the national governing body, which is why I'm delivering today's session. I'm also joined by another colleague from a couple of colleagues from British Fencing as well, and we've got two guest speakers as well to join us in this session to share different experiences. We've got Sarah and we've got Nia, who we'll properly introduce later on in the session, so you can actually hear it from people involved in what we did last time when we ran the World Cup. We'll be taking questions as well. We'll take those questions at the end of the session, and at that point we'll stop the recording as well. So if you could hold on to any questions that you do have, we'll pick those up at the end. Okay, so a little bit of background to us hosting an international competition in the wheelchair fencing space. So this is new to us. Well, it was new to us last year. We were successful in applying to be able to host a World Cup through the International Federation, World Ability Sport. They were, I was, they are now World Ability Sport. And we started from scratch back in kind of mid 2023 to successfully execute the World Cup that took place in Cardiff. And this was the first time for us that we had run anything on this scale. It was the last Paralympic qualifying event in Europe before the Paris Games. So there was a lot riding on it for us as a nation, as a host nation, but also for our athletes as well. So we had kind of real clear purpose with the World Cup. How can we host a top quality international competition? And how can we also make sure that we maximise the opportunities for our GB athletes as well in that space around supporting them in qualifying and qualifying points, but also new athletes coming to that space and gaining international experience. So we ran it in January in chilly, cold Cardiff in South Wales, and it was quite chilly. And we had over 180 athletes from 30 different countries. I think it was over 30 countries that attended this. So it was better than we expected. And we also had as well, on top of that, you have all the support staff that come with those athletes as well. So well over kind of 400, I think, accredited people during the competition. One of the big differences for us hosting an international competition like this compared to our domestic competitions is that from the moment the athletes land to the moment that they leave at the end of it, we're really responsible for them when they're here in this country. So getting them to and from the airport, so they book their own flights, but making sure that they can be transported from the airport through to Cardiff, and then their shuttle buses from the venues to the hotels, etc. And that in itself is a huge undertaking, something that we work with a specialist partner. And remember, with all of this as well, we're talking about a lot of athletes that are wheelchair users. So from an equipment perspective, a huge amount of equipment being moved around during this time as well. We were really fortunate to actually be able to host in Wales, and we're really excited about going back there in 2026. I use the word that I use the saying and the phrase when I talk about this. It was a very non-transactional period of time for us. So sometimes with events, you hire a venue, go in, deliver it, and then you leave. But for us, this became much more than just delivering a competition. The relationships that we've built in Wales, and the support that we had from UK Sport, Welsh Government, Sport Wales, and Disability Sport Wales was something that without that we would not have been able to execute what we did. So it was really important for us that hosting a competition in Wales as well, that we really thought about the Welsh culture, the Welsh language, and that we celebrated everything that is brilliant about Wales as well. And that, again, that was only possible by working with colleagues from Welsh Government and Disability Sport Wales in particular as well. So the other thing for us as well is around profile raising. So how do we use this as an opportunity to raise the profile of our sport, both from a wheelchair fencing perspective, but also from the Olympic discipline as well. But for this in particular, is that how do we make sure that we have more people being exposed to this brilliant sport? So in regards to the Euros, we will be going back to Cardiff, and we will be going back to Sport Wales National Centre. So some of you may have been there in the past, some of you may never have been to the venue. I think it's probably fair to say that when the venue was built back in the 60s, it probably didn't have access massively at mine. So there's lots of cheeky hidden steps in places where you wouldn't think there'd need to be a step. But what became really apparent for us very quickly was that the partnership that we built with the venue to make sure that we could adapt it and create as many access points throughout the venue was really apparent that the venue wanted to support us and make this work. So for us, it was a real takeover of Cardiff, and we'll be doing this again when we come to the Euros. I get quite excited about things like ramps and different things around how can we upgrade toilets that maybe aren't set out specifically as being that accessible, to putting small tweaks and changes in that hopefully will make a difference to those athletes. Because when we talk to our athletes in the Paris space, access, food, making sure they have enough time to use facilities and move around the venue as freely as they possibly can is really top of the list, because we know the competition will run itself with a great DT team, but how do we make sure that we really think about that athlete experience when we go into that venue? So that was really, really important to us, and something we worked really hard with the venue to make sure that we could achieve that, and with our accommodation and transport provider as well. So when we go back to Wales in October, the competition will be taking place in October. So we hopefully will be slightly warmer, but we've already got plans to warm the venue up if it is cold again. And it's a longer competition, but it's slightly smaller in the numbers that we're looking at, because obviously this is zonal, so we're talking about European athletes only, whereas the World Cup was across the world, and we did have athletes from all over the globe attend the World Cup. So we will still be actually having as many pistes, but we'll also be taking over slightly more space as well, because the more space we have, the more movement we have for athletes. So we'll be re-looking at the photo I've got on the screen here. Hopefully gives a good kind of view about we don't different to our domestic competitions, our BYCs, our nationals, we can have kind of 40 odd pistes in a space. We're looking around about 22 to 24 pistes across different spaces of the venue, but how do we make sure that every space where we have those pistes as well, it feels like a competition ready environment? So we'll definitely be doing some kind of movement of some of those pistes to create a little bit more space where we can. But this hopefully this picture gives you a little bit of a feel for what the competition looked like. For those of you that are wondering what that big blue wall is in the middle, that was the backdrop for live streaming as well. So we had live streaming taking place, and we had some of the best figures that have ever actually been seen at a World Cup event as well on the live streaming, because of the quality, and to be honest, the investment that went into really making that a high quality viewing experience. So the competitions will be longer, but a shorter duration of time. So we will be needing, we'll talk about volunteering in a moment, more volunteers for a longer duration of time to support the competition. We also want to make sure that I mentioned it before, but that we do really think through what this opportunity provides us with. We have a longer lead-in time for this as well, and we have a responsibility, and UK Sport as well are working with us on this to make sure that we really think about what is that legacy and that social impact piece for us. So we, along with our partners at Disability Sport Wales, will be working with a number of partners to plan that out, and to start to plan that out this side of Christmas, really, to go, what does our social impact program look like? How can we use this as a catalyst to raise the profile of the sport, to bring more people into it, both from a potential those that could go through and could be attending an event in years to come, but also when we talk about community spaces, and when we talk about physical activity and providing seated fencing opportunities for those that maybe don't ever want to go to join a club, or they don't particularly want to think about competition experiences, but they're looking for a new sport to get involved with. So we'll be really working closely with Disability Sport Wales and other local partners in Wales, Welsh Fencing, etc., to make sure that we can deliver a programme that is fitted and is suitable for what we need in Wales. So what we're going to do, you've probably heard enough from me now. Like I said, if you've got any questions, hold on to those until the very end. I'm going to bring Nia in now. So Nia, I'll let her introduce herself in a moment, but I think probably fair to say both Sarah and Nia, who you'll hear from today, are stalwarts of the World Cup world that we had, and great confidence in both, and then everything they did and they brought to the team. So I wanted to bring Nia in now. Really, we're just going to have a little bit of a conversation about her role at the World Cup and some of her experiences as well, and what it means for Nia. So Nia, without further ado, do you want to take yourself off mute and just do a very quick intro about yourself and also just around Disability Sport Wales for those that don't know who Disability Sport Wales are?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Nia Jones. I'm the project manager with Disability Sport Wales. So we are an organisation that supports disabled people to engage with sport from grassroots right through to potential Paralympians who might get medals. So our sort of remit is very wide in terms of engaging people and also advocating for engagement of disabled people in sport. I think within the World Cup itself, we worked very closely with V and British Fencing, um, with a particular focus myself just around that kind of legacy engagement and recruitment of volunteers.
Great, thank you, Nia. So, can you just give us a little bit of background about what's it mean for Wales to be able to host another major para sports event? Because I know you've been involved in a number of different para sport competitions that have taken place.
Yeah, I've been involved with quite a few over the last few years. There's a real drive at the minute within Wales to create a nation where parasport thrives. And having major events come to Wales is a key part of that. In 2014, we had the IPC European Athletics that came to Swansea. And then since then, we've had a number of different events through the Parasport Festival. We've had Wheelchair Rugby European Championships, VI Judo, Deaf Football, Deaf Rugby, Para Triathlon, along with the fencing in the World Cup. So we've had a number of different events, which each time we kind of take those learning from those events and hand it on to the next one. Events Wales and the Welsh Government are really kind of keen and really on board with creating us into that nation where parasport thrives and it's a real hub for people to come and compete. Obviously, part of that is facilities, access, hotels and stuff in the area, and them getting used to disabled people coming along using facilities and things like that. So it's a real key driver for us as Disability Sport Wales and Welsh Government at the minute.
And I think, Near, it's fair to say for us when we were looking at putting the bid together to host the Euros, a huge amount of work was done behind the scenes around accommodation and around making sure that could Wales host, did it have the space to host what it needed? And again, we were very fortunate to work with a number of hotels and our accommodation provider to even put in kind of extra aids and support needed into some of the hotel rooms to just to help that athlete experience as well, because we want to make sure that obviously every athlete that comes into the UK thinks it's a good place to come for a competition and for a parasport event in particular. So a real attraction for us to go back and to want to do this again in Wales was I guess the desire from partners in Cardiff in particular to make sure they could run the best possible competition for the para athletes.
Yeah, definitely. And I was speaking to some of our colleagues from Nirvana, a travel organisation that have worked on a few of our events, and even they were reflecting on the fact that when they first started having para events in Wales, some of the kind of hotels and the people they linked with would have to be told, or let's make sure there are spaces for wheelchairs, let's make sure that tables are spread out, let's make sure that when the bus comes to pick people up, that there's access. Whereas now they're kind of going and all those things are already in place because they're learning from those experiences and kind of creating those more inclusive environments. So, yeah.
And I saw that firsthand a few weeks ago. You were involved in the para badminton, and it was great to go and see what the guys from badminton were doing. So different sport, different layout, but they'd already made changes to the venue as well, like additional changes, additional ramps, movement of kind of set chairs on a balcony area that I think Tanni Gray Thompson, who is the chair of Sport Wales, I think had made the comment that she's never been able to access that balcony to see what the view is like, which is kind of ridiculous when you think about it. And actually, with the venue being so driven as well to make the venue accessible, there's been there will be a permanently fixed ramp and the movement of a number of chairs to open up that viewing area. And that might sound small fry to some people, but I think that was, that's credit as well to the venue and to other sports going, how do we step it up now as well? So if we all have that responsibility every time we go into venues and to host these competitions, we're going to give everybody a better experience, hopefully, in the end as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So Nia, t tell us, obviously you're on the call to talk about the Euros. What does it mean for you guys for the fencing to come back? Are you excited? You don't have to say you are, just because you're at school, but what does it mean for you guys at Disability Sport Wales, and Welsh Government to have us coming back?
It's huge for us to have this level event come back to Wales. It's always positive because there is so much that comes out of it in terms of that kind of the social impact around schools, around community groups, as you've kind of already mentioned, around sort of hotels and accommodation and things like that. So I think everyone in the team's looking forward to it. I was fortunate enough to work on it quite heavily last time. I think we're going to try and engage more of our Disability Sport Wales team members to come in and sort of have those experiences around major events. For Welsh Government, like I said, it's a really big driver. They kind of have their eye on some key events over the next few years, ones that have good profile and kind of make an impact. And in terms of for our performance team, really key time where we can have this major event as a hook to push and promote seated fencing opportunities, because you never know when there's an athlete that will come through the system who has a particular talent and can then go through the pathway and hopefully end up with a Paralympic medal.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to kind of share an image and some stats actually near that you made this happen. Do you want to talk through this a little bit about the kind of community engagement and the opportunities that the World Cup provided in helping raise the profile of the sport?
Yeah, well, I think in the lead up to the World Cup, there was quite a few conversations around what could be done. We had sort of a short window of time to sort of get some community engagement going. So we had some really good links with schools from the kind of previous events that we delivered. So working with Fran, who's on the call, we managed to engage 10 different schools over 17 sessions, where we had athletes going in, doing some sessions with the children, teaching them about fencing. And in the end, we engaged over 325 students. And we were lucky enough to have some of those schools come to the actual World Cup event as well, which was phenomenal. And they were all having a brilliant time meeting the athletes, getting autographs. And I think for them, the opportunity we took them into the armory. So they kind of got to see the bits that go on in the background as well. So they've learned about fencing. They've come to the event. They've seen athletes in action. They've seen, the best of the best competing. And then they got to see, how everything gets tested, what has to go on in the background to enable an athlete to get on to the piste. So it was brilliant for them. They had a fantastic day. We had sort of SEN schools and mainstream schools attend as well. So it was just a phenomenal opportunity to kind of do that grassroots engagement. And sort of along with all of that, we created a digital resource that the schools had as well. So they had sort of that background in fencing, they had information on Forging Futures so that they could engage with that program as well if they wanted to. So in terms of really raising the profile of wheelchair fencing and seated fencing, it was a phenomenal opportunity, and really excited to grow that now and develop it off the back of the Euros in 2026.
I think as well, probably for a lot of people that potentially are going to watch this session, we know that fencing isn't a huge spectator sport. There was a huge amount that went into getting the live streaming right. But what I saw for the first time, which I think, gave me goose pimples walking into the hall and seeing it, and it's kind of capturing some of these pictures, was the energy that these kids brought into the sports hall. And I know actually that was I think our GB athletes in particular, who aren't used to that in this country, were I don't want to say overwhelmed, but were really pleasantly surprised and really, were fantastic ambassadors. They spent the time. I think you can see Ollie and Dim there, that they were chatting to the young people, and I actually popped up into, so there was an area specifically for our world class program. And so again, partnership working with the venue and with UKSI, we had an area for our athletes to be able to do what they need to do and prepare in. And we popped in to deliver a load of good luck messages and notes for the athletes. And I remember actually handing them over to Ollie, and he was just made up. I think it was it made I kind of we left that room thinking, this is so important, and that belief that a lot of these young people have never seen fencing before, Nia, had they? But to
Yeah,
come
no,
into
they
that
haven't.
space and experience it, that there's so much more, and we're very excited about what we can do around the years as well. So yeah, that was a real buzz moment, I think, for a lot of people that were in that space, to see those kids cheering our athletes on and waving their flags and their big hands and everything. That was absolutely incredible. So, kind of last question, which will start to lead us into a little bit more around obviously volunteering, and Nia, you were heavily involved in the volunteering program as well. Um, Before we hear from Sarah, do you want to talk us a little bit through around from your perspective as well? There's the classic saying, volunteers are the lifeblood of sport, which we know, and that is more so in particular when we come to events, and really important when we come to wheelchair fencing, because the amount that is needed to make, without them, the event wouldn't really happen, to be perfectly honest, because you need them on piste, etc., etc. Um, the stats were quite amazing, weren't they? And we probably could have done with more, if we're being honest.
Yeah,
Talk us a little bit through what you can see, or what we can see here on the screen.
yeah. Well, kind of as I said, we had sort of 80 volunteers over the 4 days of the competition. And like you said, the like things don't run without volunteers within the sport sector in Wales. They are really key to ensuring that everyone has the best possible experience. Um, and it's brilliant when you kind of get. We had a sort of a mix of volunteers who were really familiar with fencing and were there because they were engaged with the sport, and then we had a small group of people who were there because they enjoy volunteering in sport and other things, so they were having that kind of first experience of fencing. So there was a real nice mix of the different types of volunteers that you do have. But yeah, I mean, a fantastic group of people who worked so hard over those 4 days and were so happy to kind of get involved on piste, out in the front of the venue, out the really cold bits out the back, supporting athletes up and down in the lifts. So yeah, it's really key to have them, and I think the brilliant thing that there was with the World Cup event was just the appreciation to the volunteers afterwards. We did a couple of interviews and stuff with some of them, and they were like, "Me, you want to interview me?" It's like, "Yeah, because like you're one of the most important roles within the whole event." So it's really key that we get as many people in as we possibly can, engaging with sort of universities, and a lot of volunteers at the moment are those kind of newly retired people who have a lot of time on their hands and are looking for things to do. So kind of engaging with those communities to get them involved, and a lot of them with parasport for the first time. So enabling them to have that experience as well and kind of take it forward into other sports.
Brilliant. Nia, thank you very much. And if anyone's got any questions for Nia at the end, then hold on to those and we'll come back to her. But that leads us really nicely into Sarah, who was an absolute just grafter at the World Cup. Again, it's really important that you always know you've got people you can rely on, and people that you can trust to get on and pretty much do. If you ask them to do something, they'll get on and do it, but also just be a really happy smiley face to people that are coming through the door when you've been sitting at a table for potentially a very large amount of hours, that smile's always there. So Sarah certainly for us really shone through as a really brilliant and kind of asset to the team. So Sarah, could you just introduce yourself and just give everyone a bit of an idea about how you what your connection to fencing is as a starting point, because you've come in through the almost the fencing community.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, so my daughter fences. She's been fencing now probably for about, I don't know, 12, 13 years. So I've been in and around fencing as a mom and a supporter all that time. And I volunteer for her club, Fencers Club London, both in the cafe, supporting competitions as a welfare officer. So yeah, so I've been in and around fencing overall for a number of years now.
Thank you, Sarah. And also one of the best cafes I think I've been to at fencing competition. Very good cake there.
They're very good
So
cake.
yeah, yeah, really good cake. So Sarah, why did you sign up to volunteer at Cardiff?
Yeah, so it's sort of, well, lots of different reasons, really. One, I'd never seen parafencing done up close, so that was something I wanted to go and experience. My daughter's coach is a Paralympic fencing coach, so for me, it was a little way to say thank you and give back to him. And a way to give back to the sport, actually, because fencing has given my daughter this just amazing set of experiences. And so, sort of for me, a way to give back. My company actually supports us doing volunteering, so that was really great as well. Yeah, just a chance to see a sport that I know, but for wheelchair fencers and making it accessible, just an amazing experience, basically.
Thanks, so yeah, and really interesting to hear all the different motivations, one around giving back to the sport, but also, and that's lovely. I hadn't realised that about your coach as well, as a nice way to, yeah, as a bit of a nod to them as well, because there's so many roles within the sport that get our athletes as well to where they are. What roles did you play in Cardiff? Can you give us a little bit of a what was a day in the life in Cardiff like for you?
Well, it was very cold to start off with. I remember. So did all sorts of things. I think I did some work on the welcome desk, on the lift. So obviously just helping the athletes get up and down to weapons check and to getting their bags put safely into the sort of off-piste rooms where all the kit lived. Piece side, so helping move the pistes round for left-handed, right-handed, which I hadn't ever really appreciated before, but doing that and helping the athletes get locked in, secured in their wheelchairs on the pistes, making sure they'd got all their kit if they needed it. So yeah, lots of different things really. A lot of heavy lifting, which actually is the one thing that really surprised me because you look at it and you don't really think about, or I hadn't really thought about the mechanics of how wheelchair fencing worked in practical terms. So yeah, a lot of moving of kit.
And I think so. One thing I noticed when I first started getting involved in wheelchair fencing was certainly through the eyes of a volunteer or somebody working on the floor, how different it is. So at in the kind of Olympic standing fencing space, you don't go the only people that go into the peace space are the referees.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, you are literally you are there to make sure that that athlete can get in their chair, it's the right way, it's set up, and they feel really importantly, they feel really safe and secure in that chair so they can do what they need to do. So it's very hands-on, isn't it? Um,
Yes, and I think that's probably one of the biggest differences. You're much, yeah, in sort of a lot of my other experiences of being a supporter, or whatever, you're a long way away. Well, and usually hiding behind a column in my case, like out of fear. But yes, with wheelchair fencing, it's very hands-on, and also making sure that the athletes, yeah, to your point, feel secure because they do need to be secure because of the huge amount of movement that there is and force and energy when they're fencing. And of course, each athlete likes everything set up their own way as well, which was also something I think as I was, as you got a little bit more confident, I was certainly quite nervous starting off. But then as the day sort of wore on and the athletes were so accommodating, and helping explain what they wanted, what they needed, what they didn't need. So yeah, that was a really, really good learning curve because obviously they're in a competitive environment. they're at the top of their game. They're trying to win and get what they want out of it. So, you're there playing a really important role in helping them.
Yeah, and I think something we did in the volunteer training beforehand, because the majority of people that volunteered for the World Cup weren't from the fencing community. So they didn't really know. They were what we'd call kind of almost seasoned event volunteers, kind of near touched on it earlier about, they really, they give a huge amount of time to different international competitions. And actually Gemma Collis, so Welsh athlete, GB athlete, did a great video for us that we played in the volunteer training. So through the eyes of an athlete, what is good practice, and also equally what isn't, what's not
Yeah.
great practice. And that, I think that was a really useful tool for us to share with volunteers, to hear it from the voice of an athlete about the do's and the don'ts, which really hopefully help with that kind of prepping you up and getting you ready in that space. So you've touched on a few differences in regards to like the on-piece side of it. Is there anything else from your perspective that you would highlight for those that are maybe listening to this, that have only ever been in, or been to a domestic, like a British fencing domestic standing competition? Are there any other major differences that you saw with this international setup that we had, and think you would pick up on?
I think, I mean, like all international, well, competitions where the athletes come together, you've got to be prepared. They don't all speak English. So, it's more, you have to be slightly more involved. You've got to second guess a little bit more. And I think, yeah, maybe just the amount of kit and people and sort of, you just need to think a bit more. I mean, everybody's traveled from around the world. Some things may have gone missing, or some things aren't where they want. So I think you've just got to be slightly more mindful, I think, in an international community than maybe a domestic. And obviously they're away from home. So I think just thinking about that, it may be a familiar venue to many of us. Cardiff is an amazing venue. But obviously for lots of the international athletes, they don't know where they are. They're in a foreign place. So I think just being mindful of that. But obviously that is also part of the sort of the fun and the excitement of it, is that everybody's traveled in. They're from all over the world, or for the Euros, they'll be from all over the Eurozone. And you get this meeting of people who may know each other, may not know each other, and I don't know, it's just a real excitement. I think it's such an energy. It's like, it brings a huge energy. It's really exciting.
I think one of the things I remember as well, from where you were based, Sarah, on that kind of welcome desk as well, in that athlete zone where they would come in through the transport, that we had some brilliant Welsh volunteers as well. And if I'm right, there was a few people that I walked down the corridor a few times and I'd hear somebody speaking in Welsh trying to teach somebody from other side of the world who English wasn't their first language, but they
Yeah.
were really keen just to absorb that Welsh culture. And I think one of the things I certainly find with working in Wales is that, like that, it's the Welsh culture and the Welsh language and how that is celebrated through the event as well is really important. So it was always funny. It always did make me chuckle when I'd walk through and hear somebody speaking, trying to teach somebody who English wasn't their first language, Welsh as well. So hopefully we can do some more quirky stuff around that for the Euros as well. And I think, Sarah, last couple of questions from me before we start to kind of wrap up with any questions. But from your perspective, have you got any highlights, any kind of key moments or highlights from your time volunteering?
I think it was so much fun, sort of the camaraderie. It's long days, it's quite hard work, but it's so much fun. You're together with a very different, diverse mix of people as volunteers, to your point. Obviously, some were from fencing who I knew, many others were, as you said, volunteers, people I'd never met, although have subsequently met at other events, which is great. So yeah, just the camaraderie and seeing the athletes and just feeling that energy, and actually the school kids as well. I do remember when they were cheering as the GBR athletes were fencing, and it's actually even now I feel a little bit tingly. It was,
Yeah.
because you don't normally get that at fencing. Fencing is weirdly sometimes a very quiet sport, other than all the clinking and the swords and the bleeping and everything. And to have all those kids just rooting for our athletes, yeah, that was really special. Actually, it was to see, Olympic, Paralympic level athletes, competing, and school kids just like getting really into it. It was a really special moment, actually, a really special moment.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And then the final question then. So if anyone's watching this and thinking, well, should I do it? Should I put my name forward? What would you say? What would be your words of encouragement to them?
Definitely do it. It was the first time I'd ever really volunteered at a major event like that. And it was so much fun. I got so much out of it, met people, I had a whole different respect for a sport that I thought I knew and now know a whole lot more about it in its widest format. But definitely volunteer. Don't be put off by, if you think, oh, I couldn't physically do that, there's lots of other volunteer jobs where you don't have to lift heavy kit or anything like that. I think so for anybody who's thinking about it, I would encourage you to do it. You get so much out of it.
Brilliant. Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time out of work today and joining us. I really appreciate that. And if you're happy to hold on as well in case anybody has any questions. So I wanted to share this photo. This is kind of one of my favorite. It doesn't capture all the volunteers, but I think this was a particular group that were on shift at that time, the Blade Buddies. And I think one of the big differences for me I found at this competition was because it was different on the scale to what we've ever run before. Working around so many volunteers was amazing, and just seeing kind of smiles on people looking exhausted but smiling faces, and I think this really kind of nicely sums it up as well. We had a real mixture of people in that space who absolutely grafted to make it as best a possible experience for our international athletes that came over to Cardiff. So just a couple of things really before we wrap up and take any questions. We will be later on this year, we will be kind of end of the year, beginning of 26 at the latest, we'll be launching the volunteer program again. So again, it's different to things will be done slightly different to how people are used to maybe if you volunteered at our domestic events, because it's of a completely different scale and a different setup. So lots of information will start to go out on that and the sign up process. So there'll be people behind that will be making that happen. And in the meantime, if you're kind of interested or you're thinking, then you're more than welcome to drop us a note just to say you'd like to find out more. But we will be putting out the actual sign up for it later on this year / the beginning of 26. So please definitely keep your eyes open. We had a whole website section dedicated to the World Cup, and we'll have a similar setup as well. And we are looking for people from all walks of life to be involved in this. So you might be sitting here or watching this and sharing this with somebody that isn't even from the fencing world. That's fine. You don't need to don't need to know anything about fencing to do this. You just need to be prepared to get stuck in and have a great time. And we'll make sure that you're fed and you're watered and you're looked after when you're here. And I think we've got a lot of learnings as well that we can take to hopefully make the experience even better for volunteers going into the Euros. So I will stop talking there, and we can finish the recording off there, Rick, if